let's talk about different cutting methods. I'm going to be showing and exploring the three most common. I'm not sure if there are any others. If you know of any other cutting methods that aren't these three, please feel free to share with me and I will be happy to explore. These are the three methods that I use for cutting my fabric and sewing projects. We have a rotary cutter, a very well-known cutting method which I've used from the beginning. It's something that I saw in lots and lots of videos. It looked quite easy, so I've used a rotary cutter for quite a long time. We have scissors. These are lovely, beautiful big shears that some people refer them to. I don't know why. There's nothing wrong with just calling them scissors. I've been through quite a few different versions. So these are some older scissors of mine. I've had these scissors before too, which haven't done well over time, actually, these particular ones. But anyway, I'm on to my third, this is my third pair of cutting scissors, which are the longest and heaviest that I've had. And then my latest gadget, which I have seen around a lot in videos and I've been desperate to try, is some cordless electric cutting scissors. Now these, oh dear, I don't know about these. These are very interesting. So we'll be having a look at these today. I'm going to cut some different fabrics. I'll go through the pros and cons of the different cutting options on different fabrics so you can make the decision for yourself on what you feel is the best cutting option for you. So I'm going to be cutting, I've got some canvas, I've got some slippy satin, I've also got some sort of medium weight cotton, which is a really good quality, and then I also have a pair of jeans, so we've got some denim here as well. The rotary cutter, now the rotary cutter I love just because it's a really thin blade. You get a really nice sort of neat smooth cut. So here, this is on the cotton fabric, so I am simply going to cut straight up here. So it's a pretty even, steady cut that goes really smooth. Notoriously tricky to cut, slippier sort of fabrics. Again, I'm literally just going to cut straight up here. Okay, again, pretty good. Okay, this is the heavier, sort of thicker weight of the canvas, and I'm just going to, again, I've had to apply more pressure to kind of get through that. Again, nice and smooth, a nice straight, fluid sort of movement round on there. Now let's try it with something a little bit of a curvier shape. So you'd have to kind of curve if we want to go and do like a curvy pattern piece, for example. It still works really well, still cuts really smoothly. I'm just going to do the same again on sort of like the normal cotton, and again you can kind of maneuver pretty well and it comes out really smooth and really nice as a cut. I try some denim, so this is obviously a little bit tougher. Denim can be a little bit, these are an old pair of jeans that are on my upcycle list. Now the only downside obviously with doing this actually is I can't get into the separate layers. So if I'm going to rotary cut this, I've pretty much only got the choice of being able to go the whole way through everything. So if you need to do separate layers of cutting, that's a downside with a rotary cutter. You can't get into doing, I suppose you could split it here and kind of if you needed to take it, but then you've got to keep sort of maneuvering it round. It's a little bit more fiddly over really, it's not great over really thick seams, so that hasn't cut all the way through there. So they're better for sort of thinner, finer fabrics, not anything that's too bulky or heavy. We're going to do the scissors. Here are the scissors. So let's start with the cotton again. So these are pretty heavy, so they are hefty scissors. The one thing I would say that frustrates me sometimes when you're cutting with scissors is that it obviously lifts the fabric, whereas with a rotary cutter it's permanently flat, and you know you can get right up to your pattern piece edge while you're using a rotary cutter. But many a time while I'm doing a rotary cutter, I have taken a slither off of the edge of the pattern where you're just straight up, especially with a new blade on a rotary cutter. With scissors, a bit more control, but it does lift, it lifts the piece. And so I find if you're using something with weights on, it can be a bit like, if you're getting it right close to the edge, I find it sometimes, see, like that's moved now to keep a smooth cut, and it is a bit, yeah, that's one downside of using the scissors. I prefer a pinned method with scissors, so rather than using weights, I much prefer if you pin your pattern pieces, so that then there's not as much weight, so it can lift it exactly how it needs to. It's not fighting against being held down by weights. It's a lot slower process. If you rush it, I find that you can end up with jaggedy cut parts. I find you have a lot more control with a pair of scissors. They're reasonably okay for curves. I find it a little bit awkward sometimes, especially with bigger shears, to get the kind of curves in patterns. But it's a slower process. It's probably a more mindful process than a rotary cutter. So if you want something that's a little bit more mindful, probably scissors are a better option. Let's try. Here we go. They're pretty nice on silky fabrics. That's come out pretty good. So we can, it's like pinning is the only way forward with slippy fabrics. Like pinning to oblivion is the only option, because it is insane trying to cut slippy fabrics. But it's not too bad. It's come out pretty good. It's getting through all of these different types of materials absolutely fine. Here we go with a heavier weight. So this is a canvas, medium heavy weight. It kind of gets through that as well, because they're nice heavy weighty scissors. Sort of flimsier, more lightweight scissors I feel would struggle. So if you're going to go for a scissor option, I think a nice like solid pair of scissors is key. It's come out pretty good, not too bad again. It copes absolutely fine. Doing a curvy option, not too bad. Yeah, good options. Now, as I mentioned before, if you needed to get into in between layers for cutting, these are scissors obviously are going to be the best, because you can get them in between the layers and cut, and you can get things separated a lot easier. They get through heavier seams well. If you've got really weak wrists, or you haven't got a lot of hand strength, scissors might not be, for like thicker, heavier fabrics, scissors might not be the best choice, just because they do take a lot, like you need more hand strength to kind of push to get through. So just bear that in mind. But again, because they're heavier scissors, these heavier scissors are going to help with the weight to kind of get through stuff. There we go. So not too bad. I shouldn't do that. That's a bad habit of mine. I don't know if anybody else saw this recently, but there was a video that was floating around that I saw saying about not doing that air cutting with the scissors. It's bad for the blades. You shouldn't do it. You shouldn't do crazy, but sometimes it's fun and you forget. But naughty, I mustn't do it. My new toy. I am scared about this. I've had a little play with it already. This is the one that I have. This comes off. Ooh. So your battery pack separates. You have a little guard that goes on there. Then you have a little charge station. You pop it in there. It's quite noisy, I must admit. It is quite noisy. But let's see how it gets on with fabric. So this is a very sort of medium to lightweight cotton, and the one thing I'm worried about with this is the control element of following along. So let's see how. Well, that is super easy. I feel like if you didn't take your time, this would so easily just run away with itself. I suppose you can sort of hold to guide yourself along if you need to, but that was very, very easy. This, I feel, is going to be quite crazy. Here we go. It cuts great. It cuts really smooth, but I don't necessarily think it's... You could get used to that. I don't think you could really, you can't do sort of little corners. I think if you had to do like a corner or like a point inside a pattern, that isn't going to work. You're not going to be able to get into, you'd kind of have to do a combo, I think. But yeah, that's good. You kind of feel like you have no control in the lighter weight fabrics. I think it would quite easily get away from you. This is a heavier weight material. I think this is going to work really well. That is fab. I think if you're doing really big projects, which are just straight cuts, you need to do a load over and over and over. I think it's a good shout. It's really good. I thought it would be really fabulous for denim. I've already had a play here, as you can see, of getting through. But I think this is so easy. If you are needing to just deconstruct stuff really, really quickly, it's just going to be so... Oh, I mean, it's got a mind of its own. If you're not careful, you could absolutely get in trouble. I mean, it just goes through these absolutely no problem. These seams mean absolutely nothing. Let's talk pros and cons. So with a rotary cutter, the pros are it's a very, very simple motion. It gets a very, very smooth finish, and it's absolutely fabulous for curves and sort of things that aren't a straight line. The cons are you need more than just a rotary cutter to use one. So you also need to have one of the mats like this. So you will need to invest in more things. They do have to have replacement blades, so they do get blunt. So you do need to replace them as well, which can mean more cost. And they're not great for thicker fabrics and can be quite a lot of pressure on your hand, holding them to release the blade and then pushing down to cut. Some people do struggle having those if they have wrist problems or not very good hand strength. It's a good investment all round. Scissors. So if you can afford to invest in a really decent pair of scissors, then they are really useful for all sorts of parts of your projects. I find you have more control with scissors, especially for really small areas that you may need to cut into. There's nothing else extra you need to buy. Obviously you do need to maintain them, so you will need to oil them every now and again, and they will need to eventually be sharpened over time. They will become blunt, especially if you're using particular types of fabrics. I have a separate pair of scissors that I use because I use quite a lot of coated canvas type of materials in my sewing projects, and I find I use a completely different pair of scissors because they get blunt a lot quicker. And scissors are really cool. Like, scissors are the original, they are OG. You can't go wrong with a really good pair of scissors. The downsides though, yes, can give you jagged edges if you don't use them properly. As I said, if you use pins rather than weights, it's a lot easier, and they do have a small amount of maintenance, and they can be addictive and very expensive. And this bad boy, the electric scissors, I think it has its place. I don't think it's for every project type. They are great for thicker fabrics. They're very quick if you have large cuts that you need to do, and they are fun. They're quite noisy, these particular model. They might not all be like that, but these ones are noisy. So if you're trying to do quiet, you know, secret sewing when everybody's asleep and things like that, you aren't really going to be able to get away with it with these. They obviously will run out, so if you're mid-cut and they haven't been charged and you've not got the battery ready, then that's going to be very frustrating, and you don't have a lot of control with them. So they, again, offer large, thick, easy cuts, but then very useful for that. But I may get better with them, some more practice potentially, but definitely not for sort of small intricate cuts. You will need to go back to scissors or possibly a rotary cutter if that's what you feel comfortable with. So all in all, I think I'll stick with all three. They have their place, they have their uses, and if you can afford to invest and have these, build them up over time, they're all very useful and will really help in your sewing projects. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.